Hello, everyone. This is Toni Moore of the Moore Legal Law Firm. Wanted to come in and just talk about prenups. I know no one really want to talk about prenups, but it's a very good idea to have a conversation with regards to prenuptials, especially if you just are getting married and you met someone like 6 days ago on Snapchat. People even doing that anymore? Not sure, but just think, if you really don't know a person, if you don't know what their aim is, you don't know what their interest is, you have the chemistry, you're feeling good, and you feel like this is your person, this is your soulmate, then you need to have a really good conversation with regards to the finances. The finances, especially if you built up a brand, the finances, especially if you have a lot of assets and you have a lot of investments and you have a lot of different property that no one knows about. See, here's the thing. A lot of people say, get a prenup. But this is what I know. When you have a prenup, you're pretty much having to disclose all of the things that you own and all of the things that you owe. The minute you fail to disclose and someone executes on the prenup and they find out that you're a liar and deceiver, guess what? They can say you didn't properly disclose. If you didn't properly disclose, then guess what? You can find yourself on the other side of the law where the very thing that you were trying to protect is now going to be subject to equitable distribution on a time if you have to divorce your loved one. And you really don't want that because let me say, just a long, long time ago, probably about 15 years ago, I was a divorce attorney. I help people with their support and their divorces and equitable distribution. And some people, when they find out that you cheated, or some people, when they find out that you really didn't love them, or they loved you a lot harder, or you guys really weren't matches up, they get really mad. You ever saw that movie, There's a Thin Line Between Love and Hate? There really is. So when you know that there's a thin line between love and hate, I really want you to understand that you need to protect your assets. You need to protect your interests because without a prenuptial agreement, then you're pretty much saying, if we ever get a divorce, God forbid, you can get 50% of what I own. It's okay if you're in a situation because you already know it in certain states where they have the laws in place where guess what? Regardless of whether or not you own it or they own it, it's marital property and it's 50% of down the lane without a prenuptial agreement. Now, when there is a prenuptial agreement, it pretty much serves as a prophylactic to protect your assets. I said it because I always tell people to treat your paper as a prophylactic that protects your assets, meaning that as long as you have disclosure, as long as they have a right to seek an attorney and ask the questions, as long as they have an opportunity to negotiate without feeling hostile, then guess what? If they sign off on your prenup and they find out that the bad end of the bargain, it's okay. You know, all is fair. But always remember the person who creates the contract is the person who rules the contract. So you can say, hey, we have it for 10 years, we have it for 5 years. I will give you these benefits. We can withdraw the prenuptial agreement upon XYZ time period. Everything is negotiable. I mean, really, it really is. You just have to open up your mouth and have a full conversation, an open conversation, asking the right questions so that you can make a decision as to whether or not someone is coming after your assets or they really like your assets. But really, this is a really good conversation to be had because I always have a lot of questions, whether it is a man or a boss lady. I remember when Wendy Williams was going through a divorce and she knew that someone had brought up a prenup, but she said that she didn't really want to talk about it. It wasn't really sexy and things of that nature. Well, we already know what happens to people when they have a divorce and they are we'll just call them the stronger financial party, the ones who make more money. If there's someone else who is relying on you, they're depending on you for the type of lifestyle that they have grown accustomed to, then they may get something called alimony pendelite. That's why even if you're going to do a prenup, you make sure that term alimony pendelite means that, hey, if we're not good, then we're not good. So don't even try to get some support. Don't try to get alimony pendelite. You walk away, I walk away, or maybe you can negotiate what that walk away money looks like, right? Because everything is negotiable. And I tell people, when you negotiate with full faith and with grace and ease, then most of the time, most people understand that some decisions probably wasn't meant to be. Like, for real, your mom and them probably didn't even want you to marry this person in the first place. And there were a lot of people, even when I was a full-time divorce attorney, who would marry because they got pregnant, or marry because they got caught out there, or marry because, the wood stick was beautiful. Oops. Did I say that? But you understand. So I don't want you to be so emotionally caught out there that you don't at least lawyer up. You don't at least see what could happen, possibility could happen if there is a divorce, if there is a situation where, you know what, your secretary is now sleeping in bed with your boo, and you lost everything, and you just want to tear up everything, even though they say they're sorry, you don't want any parts of it. You felt as though they used and abused you, that you felt as though this person just married you for their money, and then maybe they did. I have a lot of clients that find out that someone really did marry them for their money, and they had a child, and they made sure that even with a prenup, now they have child support. But we're not going to go into that conversation, are we? What we are just going to do is just stick with the prenup side of it. Know that it is a decision. It's more like a business decision. Has nothing to do with regards to whether or not they love you, whether or not they like you, but it's more about asset protection, making sure that you remove the assets from the table so that it can just be a heart conversation with regards to, if things go wrong, if you don't like my personality, if you was okay with smiling and bearing it while we were dating, but then the real me comes out, if you realize that, you know what, I've been fronting all along and I'm really scared of the boogeyman, then guess what? Or if you're just one of those people like Eric Benet, remember, I had all the allegations of it, so I'm not going to repeat it as an attorney, but allegedly he likes to dig in other purses and pocketbooks of women while he was still married. If you end up with something like that, then the law doesn't really care if it was a philanderer. No, they're just going to look at the money that you make and the money that he makes. Or in the opposite direction, if you were the male and your wife, it was a financially dependent woman, then she's going to be looking for alimony or alimony pendelite. Do you want something like that to happen? Do you want it to linger? If you don't want it to linger, if you want it to make a business decision, then you're going to have to open your mouth, and you're going to have a full conversation. And let me just tell you, it's a hard conversation the day before the wedding. It's probably a good conversation right when you're about to start thinking, this person is pretty awesome and amazing. But then you start noticing that this person doesn't have a job and is always looking for you to take care of everything. If you're into that, you're into that. But most people like to know that they're dealing with a partner who can at least stand on their own 2 feet. And if that's something that you want to have a conversation with, then make sure that there's full disclosure about the business operations, the business property, ideally that the assets with regards to the trademark, if there's any patents, if there's any copyrights, if there's any music, with regards to, is there any cash values, is there any holding companies, is there any blind trust? You need to ask all those questions. Don't go in there blind just because they're so awesome and amazing and they kiss very well and they know how to say the sweet words and nibble in your ears. No. You forget about all of that and you ignore all of that, and you come in there objectively and you have a conversation about the money. Okay, so you turn the emotions down and you bring up the vibrations of the CEO of your destiny, the CEO of your bank account. And as you are the CEO of your destiny and your bank account, then you realize that, hey, if something happens, there are some nuances where I can say, this was inherited property. This was something that I brought to the table so they wouldn't get the full investments. But that would still require you possibly to retain an attorney, duke it out in court to identify what part was marital assets, what part was premarital, uh, where sometimes you can just negate all of that conversation and just already carve out what is yours, what is his, what can possibly be y'all's. Okay. Now, we're not having a conversation about divorce. We're not going to have a conversation about, what alimony could look like, or what alimony pendelite could look like, because this is more of a conversation for my business owners or my boss girls who are so in love with their awesome and amazing guy who doesn't have a pot to piss in. So if you're dealing with someone like that, then definitely you need to protect your assets as much as possible. Now, some people avoid the prenup conversation because they don't want to divulge. Now, if you really don't want to divulge your information, you really don't want to disclose, you really don't probably want to pull out your tax returns so they can see what all the assets there were or things that you had with regards to business transactions with other family members that no one really knows about, then you might want to stick everything into a blind trust. I'm just saying, you might want to make sure it's legal, but that's something you put into a blind trust because technically, if you're anything like Trump, you really don't know what's in the blind trust, and you really don't know the blind trust is still available. See how that I just helped you make your assets disappear? So when you're thinking about those conversations, it's something that you have to be very informational with regards to just the nuances of the conversations, the nuances of what disclosure looks like, what it doesn't look like, whether it's going to wreck a potential amazing relationship, the maturity of the person that you're about to marry, and the amount of money that we're talking about. Okay, so if you're just kind of on a come up, it's not really going to really help you, but you can negotiate because here's the thing. Most people will sign anything just to get what they think that they want. So if you need to take advantage of that, everything's negotiable. And you just make sure that you're the one who's going to draft the contract because he or she who writes a contract controls the contract. All right. So this is Toni Moore of Board Legal Law. Thank you so much for having me, and we will talk real soon. If you have any questions, by the way, with regards to business, law, development, asset protection, or even intellectual property security and monetization, go over to morelegallaw.com. More, Moore, legallaw.com. Bye for now. We'll talk real soon.